Is Mesmer as overpowered in a factions only run of the game as it is in the base game with the trilogy and Eye of the North? To answer that question, no, it's not. It's probably one of the most refreshing things that I've experienced while playing through my factions only account. The account literally just has the game Guild Wars factions. That's it. It's one of the most refreshing things because in the actual metagame, Mesmer is really overpowered. It has access to so much armor ignoring damage. It just vomits damage and control. Like in this situation, because of the restriction, you don't have access to like Wastrel's Worry or Wastrel's Demise. You don't have Chaos Storm. You don't have Shattered Delusions. You don't have Spiritual Pain. Um, you don't have Cry of Pain. Like you're missing so many key. You don't have Chaos Storm. You're missing so many key damage skills that are spammed in Mesmer way. That Mesmer actually does what it's supposed to do, and that is, it is a control class that assists in damage but does not carry the damage. So with this build, if I were to swap out Psychic Instability for Energy Burn, I would, or I'm sorry, Energy Surge, I would really suffer because being able to knock down the enemy backline for 4 seconds on nearby is so much better than just like some extra damage because it lets me control them and because I'm forced to run one of each profession, which is a limitation I put on myself just so it's not just E-Surge spam. The game actually does feel quite balanced. And like Energy Surge actually is just objectively worse than Psychic Instability when it's a one of. When you have 5 Mesmers, obviously Energy Surge is better. Maybe you would run 1 Psychic Instability just in case. But if you have 5 or 4 Cry of Frustrations on Mesmer bars that AI are using, you don't really need it. So in factions only, Mesmer is actually very balanced as the player and as a bot, like as a hero. The reason for that is it doesn't have access to the best damage. Its damage mostly comes from Overload and a Natural Signet, and then it also gets some damage in with Cry of Frustration, and then some damage in with Shatter Hex. The skills you have access to aren't that many. Like, but you have Backfire, which is good. You have Empathy, which is good. I do run Empathy sometimes. I probably could swap out Empathy for maybe Resig if I'm like vanquishing an easy area or doing some content that isn't so bad. Everything feels really tight and really balanced. Like things don't feel like they're out of control like it does in the actual like trilogy. So it's definitely nice because you have breathing room. Like I only ran 2 Mesmers when I did this playthrough, and one of them was an assassin with Mesmer skills, but it ran like an illusion build with like it splashed Dom for like Cry of Frustration, Overload, and Unnatural Signet. And it ran like Arcane Conundrum and Shared Burden because Ineptitude is Prophecy's skill. So I actually ran 3 Eles. 2 were Earth Fire hybrids. They ran Earth for Churning Earth and Unsteady Ground. They ran Fire for Meteor and Bed of Coals and Flare. And like the main thing carrying my team was like a balanced team comp, and it was like 3 Eles, 2 Mesmers. So it was not that bad at all. And I actually tried running more Mesmers, and like these skills, while they're great, weren't enough to carry the team, so I had to just leave them as like Eles. But Ellie's supposed to be a damaged class, right? And like Ineptitude is really good, and obviously if I had that, that probably would be better than Earth Magic. It's hard to say because like constantly knocking down at nearby with Churning Earth and Unsteady Ground is very strong, so it also can control enemy backliners. But I actually had breathing room to experiment with different builds. I completely beat all Winds of Change. I'm on the last mission, and once I beat that, I'm gonna like change out my mercenaries so I can run up to 2 of each profession for a 7-man Winds of Change playthrough on my Writ. I'm not gonna be running Soul Twisting mitigation as the Rits or Signet of Spirits. I'm actually gonna be running Soul Twisting channeling build, which actually does pretty high burst damage. But yeah, to basically answer that question, Mesmer is actually balanced in this situation. If you ran a bunch of it, it wouldn't be as good as the Mistrust Mesmer with like Chaos Storm and all the other shit it has because it just doesn't have access to as much damage as it would. You could run like 5 of, but it would suffer. It would seriously suffer. The reason for that is you'd just be like spamming Energy Surge and Cry of Frustration. You'd be missing the Mistrust damage. You'd be missing Spiritual Pain for the extra spike, Shattered Delusions, Chaos Storm, like all these skills that are like really strong in Mesmer way. So you just have like 5 E surges basically, which would still be good. It would still be pretty strong, but it wouldn't be nearly as broken as it is in the actual metagame. Like I think the restriction of skills helps the game stay healthy, because it's almost like with Magic the Gathering, right? Like in Magic the Gathering, they keep releasing new sets of cards, and what often happens is a card that's about to rotate out from one of the previous sets in Standard is so insane with an interaction with a new card that they have to ban one or both, or like restrict it to like one of or something. So in Guild Wars, when they keep adding new skills, it's inevitable that broken things are going to arise out of that. So in the case of factions only, by restricting the skills to core and one campaign, what you end up with is core skills, what the class is like meant to do, and then some experimentation, right? Like the core skills here, Shatter Hex and Cry of Frustration, remove a hex, deal damage, conditional damage, interrupt and deal damage. These are like very core Mesmer things, right? Now, because I don't have all the other campaigns, I don't have access to like more broken skills or combinations. It's the combinations that are broken. It's not the skills themselves. It's how they're used in reference to each other. But that needs to be considered when designing skills, right? Like Chaos Storm with a 30-second cooldown is perfectly fine. Chaos Storm with a like 16 or 17-second cooldown is very, very strong, because now it lasts for 10 seconds and it drains 2 energy per hit, as well as doing like 240 damage over time. It's just like 20 energy drain, 240 damage over 10 seconds. Combine that with like psychic instability, and you can just completely wipe out enemy backlines with like 2 or 3 skills like nothing. You can throw overload on them even while they're knocked down and then just shatter it, or overload a natural signet, shatter, and then just like that the whole entire enemy group is just dead from like, a single Mesmer. Now that Ellie can do similar things with like fire AoE, but it's meant to kill things. Like Ellie is supposed to deal damage, whereas Mesmer is supposed to be support like damage and control, But yeah, that's the thing about the factions only thing. Like classes retain their identities better. Like Assassin does what it does best, single target damage, and it dies fast. And Warrior's kind of tanky support utility. Rit does what it does best. Necro does what it does the best. Monk does what it does best. Ellie is the best damage class, as it should be, because Ellie doesn't have the control of Mesmer. So if Ellie had control and damage, and the fast casting Mesmer had, it would be broken, like Mesmer is right now. But in this situation, there's not enough skills to make Mesmer broken. It actually is quite balanced, and I actually think the game should be more like this than how it is currently. But we have PvE skills, we have Eye of the North, we have all 3 campaigns. So unfortunately, it is what it is. And it's not going to change, because why would they change it for like the few thousand players still playing, But yeah, Mesmer's actually really balanced in factions only, and even when scrutinized by like Winds of Change content and hard mode, like a single Mesmer or 2 are good, but they're not what carries the team. They just make up part of the team. You can't just run like 5 of them and just like mindlessly clear out content. I mean, maybe you can, but in Winds of Change, like Energy Surge doesn't control things, it just damages things. So very likely what would happen, because you don't have Ineptitude too, so you can't have one of the Mesmers be Ineptitude. So you'd have to run an Earth Ellie. You have to. The Shared Burden is great, but it's not good enough to shut down the enemy physical. And in Winds of Change, there's enemy physical that runs up to your backline, and in one skill use with like Splinter Weapon and like a Scythe can kill like 2 or 3 of your dudes if they're like stack up, or let's say they run up to like a Signet of Spirits Rit or something. They can just spike it all for like 500 damage and kill you. So the pace of combat is insane there. But yeah, because you really miss out on Ineptitude, Clumsiness, and Wandering Eye. You still have Clumsiness, but you'd have it with Shared Burden, which is not nearly as good. So yeah, Mesmer is balanced here. It feels like it should. Like it doesn't. It's not this overpowered damage dealer. It just spits out damage. It's nice. It's nice that every class roughly does what it's supposed to, instead of becoming this new thing. Like assassin, let's be real. Assassin was never supposed to be the shadow form tank. Like this is a weird shadow form. Honestly, should be nerfed. But obviously, all the speed, all the speed clear people would be upset, and that's like what's left. So they're just gonna leave it alone. But it should be nerfed. Let's be real. Like if you think shadow form's balanced, you're insane. Like there's no way that's balanced. You can tank like infinite numbers of enemies, and then your team of mesmers in like your speed clear groups just like wipes them all out in like 2 seconds. Like yeah, tell me how that's balanced. All right, but anyways, I like to play games as they were intended to be played, and with a challenge, and with limitations, and with nuance, and with design. The current metagame just feels like nonsense. That's just not fun for me. But like I do like how Mesmer is in this. It feels balanced when you're playing as it. It's very hit or miss. Like if you miss an interrupt, it hurts because it hurts your team. Because like if you're in hard mode and like Ellie's getting spells off and you fuck up interrupts, you miss overloads, they're taking more damage. You're not dealing damage. So it's very skill based. It's very fun. It's very enjoyable. Highly recommend doing factions only or Nightfall only, or just buy a campaign for $20. Just play it. Maybe even put class restrictions on yourself for like forcing yourself to make new builds, or do the opposite. Make a restriction where you can only have Eles, you can only have ritualists or necromancers or whatever the hell, and then figure out new builds off of that. But honestly, that's been the most fun I've had in the game in a long time. So yeah, thanks for checking this out, and I'll see you in the next one.